Hello, and welcome to Stroke of Genius Podcast's executive experience. Have I got a real neat guest for you today? A businessman that is unlike any I've ever met before. He fixes banks, okay? Not for average title, bank fixer. But this is what it does. His name is Steve Stanton.
Hi, I'm Steve Stanton, and I fix banks. I help banks survive and thrive. A recurring theme in my career, senior executive pulls me in and points me at a pile of problems. Risk, controls, regulatory remediation, launching embedded finance partnerships, maybe streamlining project portfolios, cost cutting, technology transformation. There was a major reconciliation project in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, or getting involved with digital assets by launching the first tokenized investment fund in Hong Kong in 2019. Until recently, I lived in Buffalo, New York, where I was the director of strategy, operations, and technology for a $6 billion bank. Before that, I spent nearly 13 years in Hong Kong, first with Morgan Stanley as the chief admin officer and risk officer for the Asia Pacific Finance Division. That title is a mouthful. Then I worked with startups and helped launch Hong Kong's first digital asset, HCS Whiskey Fund. I began my career in public accounting. I got my MBA from New York University, and I stayed in that city until the 2008 financial crisis led me to Dubai for 2 years. In 2010, I moved to Hong Kong, and in 2022, we moved to Buffalo. Then, at long last, and by the grace of God, my family and I became proud Texas residents just recently in May of 2025. The bulk of my professional connections are still in Hong Kong, New York City, New Jersey, Dubai, and even California. But I don't really want to live in any of those places. It took a few decades, but I finally became a Texan, and I have no intention of being anything else. We are happy to meet so many great people in our new home state, including Aaron. Thank you for having me, good sir.
Stanton. So let's bring online now. Hey, good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Aaron. Thank you for inviting me.
It's really for somebody your caliber and what you do. It's an honor to have you on my podcast. I really appreciate it. But you know, I used to watch a movie called The Fixer. But you're the ultimate fixer. You fix banks. Please can describe what you see when you go into a bank. What do you see they make a mistake in? Because me being an normal person, we look at the bank as being the ultimate authority. But you fix the problem, so obviously it makes a problem. So please tell me what you see. What is the main problem you fix?
Well, I like your question, and thank you for having me here.
Yeah, sure.
Um, Depending on the bank, they have different issues. Every organization does some things very well, otherwise it would not be in business, but they all have problems. Most recently, I was in Five Star Bank in Western New York State, and it was a 200-year-old bank, one of the oldest banks in the country, and they did a lot of things right. But when you get in there, the product team doesn't work very well with the operations team, and the tech stack is a little bit outdated. And with all of these new entrants coming in, whether it's Stripe or Venmo or Cash App or these new payment systems or real-time payments and the Fed real-time payments, the pressure is on to do things better, faster, to do 24/7 real-time transactions instead of a batch daily 6 o'clock close every day. And there's a lot of pressure there. At the same time, regulatory pressures are increasing with complicated rules on funds availability, on consumer compliance, on safety and soundness. So the banks are kind of getting squeezed, and there's not a lot of money to just keep on hiring more and more people to take care of these things manually. So you need to simplify the product portfolio. Don't make the products look like a dollar store with 100 different deposit products out there. Make it look like an Apple store, a small number of products. Each one has an obvious purpose, a place in its market, makes sense to people. Make the products as similar to each other as you can make them. so that in the background, they're not hard to support. They don't have different terms, different ways you calculate interest, and that you can do your disclosures, you can put it into your core system, and you could support it, and it makes sense to the tellers. And the simpler you make the machine, the easier it is to support, the fewer issues you have, the more regulatory compliance you can get in, and the more you can eventually automate it and squeeze costs out and stay competitive and survive and thrive in the coming wave of bank mergers and consolidations.
Yeah, that really is what I saw on your LinkedIn profile, survivor, thriver, thrive. You really make, what I just heard you say, you make the bank run smoothly. And I don't care if it's a bank or business, everybody has issues. Everybody has something that keeps the flow from flowing. Maybe a rift between departments, maybe a rift between employees, whatever. But does the bank normally contact you for help, or do you contact them?
Well, if you ever saw the 1980s TV show, The A-Team, I work kind of like that. If you have a problem and you could find me, maybe you could call Steve Stanton to pull me in. That's been a recurring theme. In 2007, a former MBA classmate brought me in to help run the back office of an Icelandic bank. In 2008, a former Morgan Stanley colleague pulled me into Dubai to help turn around Schwa Capital, a regional investment bank based in the United Arab Emirates. In 2010, somebody pulled me back into Morgan Stanley to help with, I won't get into details, just a bunch of legal and regulatory remediation that Morgan Stanley had to do after the 2008 crisis. And I did that for almost 6 years in Asia Pacific. And in 2022, when I was ready to return to the United States, a former Morgan Stanley colleague pulled me into Five Star Bank because there was new innovative business line incubating. And as it was about to go live and it had to work well with the legacy parts of the bank, he said, can you please run the legacy operations, legacy technology, legacy business analysts, and make sure that this new line can go up and running and work well with what we have, and onboard fintech partnerships, and just do it light, lean, fast, efficient, make things simple. And it worked really well. Good news for my boss, bad news for me is he got offered to be a CEO a year later, and he moved to Iowa. And so a lot of the things we were working on just disappeared, and my job eventually became redundant 7 months later. And the good news is that brought me to Texas, and I'm really happy about that.
Well, I got to tell you, more than sidetrack, just for a minute on that, because I could see why I had a cowboy hat. I'm 1 hour north of San Francisco, but this is Stetson, by the way. We're gonna have to get you one next. We'll do another podcast, get you into Stetson. But you just recently moved to Texas, didn't you?
Yeah, in 2022, when we were looking to move out of Hong Kong into the US, we were looking at Austin or the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But the Buffalo, New York job at Five Star Bank it was an offer too good to pass up. So we moved our family there, and it was a great 2.5 years. But now that we moved here, we wish we'd done it sooner. It was nice. And just so you know, I have family not too far from you in San Francisco. I have family in the Bay Area. We're there fairly often.
Great. Well, as you can see, the San Francisco game never gets old. I mean, I've been on that all my life.
It's beautiful.
I've been born and raised in North Bay, California. Never gets old. But get back to banks. I'm hearing you talk, and the thing you're doing is that we click as a user. We kick out of banks and stuff. It's flawless. But there are mistakes. And you're actually the one, not necessarily the CEO, no offense, CEO, but you're really the one that makes everything run smooth.
Well, I don't want you to give me too much credit. My job is to fix the machine that does the banking. Smaller banks use a core system, which is a fancy term for software that does all your accounting. You present a check, you do an online payment, you calculate your interest, it produces statements. And so the core system does that. And when you go to a bank teller or an ATM or your digital banking interface, the core system records that transaction activity and runs up the ledger and does the daily call reports for the whole bank. You tell the federal government, you tell the Fed, here's what we started with, here's what we had yesterday, here's all the additions, all the subtraction, all the interest calculations, and here's what we have at the end of the day. And you report that. And when you add up what all the banks do, that is basically the money system. That's how much money there is in the whole economy. So my job is to go in there and look at all the things that go wrong behind the surface. I'll give you an example. Five Star Bank had over 100 active deposit products. They would open up a new branch or something else. They would come up with maybe no minimum, maybe no fee, or maybe you get a discount on something. And what happened over time is the disclosures and the terms for each of these products just kept on becoming more and more complicated. I mean, you know how complicated chess is, and there are only 64 pieces on the board. If you have 100 different, 64 squares, only 32 pieces. If you have 100 different accounts, account types as products, and each one is a little bespoke, a little custom, that means anytime you make an update or you upgrade the software or you have to give a piece of paper to a customer, there are 100 chances to get that wrong.
So you're not a financial advisor. I might make everybody clear, but I know a little bit about what's happening out there. Watch what's going. My wife is on the back channels of what's happening out there. The banking system right now, there's a lot happening. Currently, what you guys are using is Swift program, correct?
Swift, yeah.
Yeah, Swift. Explain Swift to me.
Swift, it's really just a messaging platform. It's to oversimplify it, it's almost like text messages. This bank says I send you money. This bank says I take the money, and then they reduce the money here and they bring up the money there. And as long as it all nets out, everything is the same. There's no safe where paper bills are stuffed or transported out.
Right.
So the Swift messaging platform is just a secure platform where only certain players are allowed in and they're authenticated. So when you send a message, receive a message, there are specific protocols. And the Swift is just one of the systems. There's wires, there's ACH, there are other money movement payment platforms, payment rails that just keep track of who has the money, and they each have different features of how they use, how fast the funds are accessed, what the security is, can you reverse them? Like if I send you a wire, that's it. It's irrevocable. You have the wire, you have the money. Now the banks can coordinate with themselves and take the money back from you and give it to me, but there's not really a standard process for that. Whereas if we do an ACH transaction, there's a whole set of rules called NACHA rules that give you timelines of when the funds will be available and what conditions will reverse them and how to get the money back. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what technology you're using, and who else is on the platform, there's just a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to say, I know my own life. And before my stroke, I owned my own company for 12 years. And we can't take banks for granted. I'll be honest with it, being flawless. You deposit, you withdraw, you transfer, whatever. But it's basically flawless. And I think it's amazing that you're able to go in there and keep everything running. It's amazing. It's an amazing amount of data. It's unfathomable for me, an average person, to know what the data you're juggling, was it be the actual money, or transfer, whatever. But I'm curious, as you know, my name, my podcast, Stroke of Jesus Executive Series. At what point did you realize in your life, what age, I really like money. I like work at bank. I like transfers. I like the mechanics. Tell me about that.
Believe it or not, I fell into this career. You know, like yourself, sometimes things happen to you that you didn't plan for, and you just deal with it. For my case, I went into public accounting at Arthur Andersen, and then the dot-com boom was happening, 1999, 2000. I went to business school with the idea that I'm going to be a strategy consultant. BCG and McKinsey are going to hire me, and I'm going to go into companies and I'm going to fix them and sort them out. And I don't care whether it's a bank or a manufacturer. I was in NYU when the Twin Towers fell on 9/11, 2001. And consulting jobs just disappeared. I mean, that was the least of our issues, and my life turned out great. I'm not complaining for myself, but I switched gears. I had a summer project in a little investment management firm, and I stayed there for 2 years. I wasn't making much money, and it wasn't that exciting, but I had time. I did writing. I did other stuff. And then when the Sarbanes-Oxley rules came out, I'll spare you a long explanation of that, but basically every public company had to record its internal controls and have people put in these systems. I started doing that as SOX implementation, Sarbanes-Oxley internal controls and risk consulting. And it was consulting. It was interesting. I saw a bunch of companies, a jewelry company, software company, pharmacy benefit manager. After a couple of years, Morgan Stanley needed someone to take their SOX, their Sarbanes-Oxley processes and make them better. So I went and I joined the New York office, and I really enjoyed Morgan Stanley. It's a company full of very, very smart people, and the teamwork is pretty good. The expectations are high. The performance is good. And I made some friends and connections that I still have to this day. And the only reason I left is that Icelandic bank wanted me to do a big, important, cool sounding job, and I did it, which was its own roller coaster. The 2008 financial crisis happened, and that job disappeared. We kept that legal entity alive, the Icelandic bank subsidiary. We kept it alive, and it's still alive today. But I had to fire myself, and the 30 people in the office, the only way we had live investment banking M&A mandates. So if companies found a buyer or they found someone to acquire, we would get a fee of potentially $4 million. And when the 2008 crisis happened, all of our other sources of revenue were gone. And we had to live or die based on getting those deals done and getting those 7-figure fees. But we couldn't afford to pay 30 people on the payroll. So we took all the contracts and said, okay, Aaron, you have a 30-day notice in your contract. Here's your notice.
Oh, my goodness.
Steve. So I fired myself. I fired my intern. We fired everybody. And then, but, 3 or 4 of the people stuck around, and they got that next deal done, and they got a few $1 million in the door, and that carried them for 6 months, and they got another deal done. And now they're doing very well with a little boutique M&A firm, and they're still friends of mine, and they're still in business in the same legal entity under a new name. But that was exciting. And for me, my part, my 30 days notice, I fired myself, 30 days notice. And on the 31st day, I was in Dubai starting my next job already.
You can't knew your layoff was coming, your termination was on its way. But, it's amazing to me. Now, what were you doing in Dubai? I don't think I'm clear on that. What were you doing in Dubai?
Well, a former colleague of mine, he became the CFO of Shua Capital. It was a regional investment bank with offices in Saudi and Egypt and a few other countries in the area. And his mandate was to take this 500-person bank and turn it into the Goldman Sachs of the Middle East and grow it to 2,000 people and, join London, New York, Tokyo, and Hong Kong as a global financial hub. Unfortunately, the 2008 crisis had a delayed time fuse and caught up with Dubai about half a year later. So about 10 months in, that 500-person bank was down to 300 people, and he and I were surplus to requirements. He and I and our secretary all met at his house, grilled up some cheeseburgers, and decided to launch a consulting firm. And within 30 days, we were cash flow positive. And within 6 months, I was making as much money as I ever made before. But he was the CFO of a public company, so it was a pay cut for him. He stuck around for another 6 or 8 months, and I stuck around for another year. And then I was ready to leave Dubai. I love Dubai, but you have to really sort out your work situation. And consulting the way we were was just not a good long-term play for us. So I have nothing bad to say about Dubai, but I was very happy with my move to Hong Kong.
Well, I've only heard great things about. There's truck drivers in Dubai I talked to, but Steve, I'm curious. Now, you mentioned that your life took its direction. I'm gonna tell you my stroke.
Please.
It brought me here. I'm with you now. I would not have been here, and I'm just being forced stroke and brainism. It's the meaning of life works that way. It's that things in your life brought you to doing banking and do the service of banking. So it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you follow your call or find your call, your passion in life, it's great. I love it. You don't work for a living. I didn't work. I love what I do. And
you're good at it.
It's really great. But I want everybody out there, and that's just the truth of business. You think things are falling apart. They may be just falling into place. Be patient. Let life play out, work out. But Steve, I'm curious. Now, you sat there, told you fell in love with the bank system, the banking, and all that. But that was back probably when I remember part of my brain aneurysm. I was self-employed then. I had wineries call me up, and I was small, much smaller. I was a 1-man operation, did large water storage tanks for the wine industry here in Napa, Sonoma. I had people calling me, I'll give you $150,000 deposit back. I think it partly cost my brain, and I was under so much pressure back then. But yeah, you didn't fight life. You went all ahead, and you went all in on what you're doing today. But I'm curious. Now, if you're a bank out there, or you know of a bank that may need help, Steve, how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, I should have a business card to give you. That's not going to work, is it? I have a website, sotadvisory.com, stands for Strategy, Operations, and Technology, sotadvisory.com, or Steve Stanton on LinkedIn. I have a bit of an online presence. I'm Steve Stanton on LinkedIn, sotadvisory.com. I have a Calendly. Anyone who wants to meet me, I have a Calendly link, Calendly, CALENDLY.com/hi Steve, HISTEVE.
That's kind of creative. That's great.
So Calendly.com/hi Steve, and you can book a half hour and we can have a chat.
All right, that's great. Now the banks, you're gonna have mainly deal with CEO of the bank. That is, what is your email? Say that one more time. What's your email?
My email is Steve, STEVE, at SOTadvisory.com. Steve at SOTadvisory.com.
And just so everybody knows, I love your presence here, by the way. More people need to do that. Use a bike or car, people. I'm just telling you, I was in my business. When I was doing business back in the 2000s, my bike or a car was out white. It was more like Steve, so I brushed it aside and see something point that out. But I think how do you get your leads? How do you find new leads? How do you find what's happening out there?
That's what I do worst, Aaron. You're better at that than I am. So you've done very entrepreneurial stuff, and with working in banking, you could you could get fired, you could get zero bonus, you can lose your job, but nobody calls you up and says, in the back office, give me $50,000 back, give me a deposit back. It's like, no, my income is at risk, but my life savings isn't at risk. You pay me the money, it's mine, and you can fire me, but I still have my money. When you're doing something entrepreneurial, that's much more risky. So being focused on the back of the house, product, operations, technology, business analyst, finance controllers, tax, treasury. I've not really been great at getting out there and networking, and this is hard for me. In Hong Kong, I knew everybody. In New York, I knew a few people. In Dubai, I knew a lot of people, but in Texas, I'm still very new. But this is a really great community, and good people help good people. So I want to be as helpful as I can to as many people as I can, and they will bring me the right opportunities. And you're one of them. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Yeah, I knew Barnsley. I really enjoyed it. But I'm going to call all my C-suite executives, Jeff Hayes, all the people there. Definitely network with Steve. Get a hold of him. He'll definitely me being sending you jobs this way, but take a look at that. But Steve, it's only half an hour got. We're pretty much done with the podcast. So I just want to thank you so much for being here. And I really will do my best to get this spread out. This all has Spotify. And I'll be on Spotify. We'll be on C-Suite TV. And so we'll try to get you out there and get your name there. Help you do some marketing.
Thank you so much, Aaron. You're a great guy. I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm glad C-Suite brought us together. It's a great organization.
It's a great area. I agree with Steve on that one. But okay, well, you have a great time, Steve. Thank you so much for being on the show, on my podcast. I appreciate it. You have a great day, bro.
You too, Aaron. See you soon, on camera or off.
Bye-bye.